Welcome to Mainzframe, the show where we share development insights about the daily work at Ubisoft Mainz. My name is Bastian Thun, communications manager of the studio, and today with me is David, senior 3D artist here at Ubisoft Mainz, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so you have been with the team for quite a while. What was the first game you worked for here at Mainz?
So I started as an intern with Anno 1404, so it was like mid-main production, I would say, and then this was just half a year, and then afterwards I stayed a little bit longer as a freelance character artist, and then I graduated from university with my diploma in media design, and then I started doing freelance jobs in various industries. So I kind of wanted to experience everything as a 3D artist that's available. So basically from automotive to a movie, lighting and rendering, etc. And then I met Potti, the studio manager, one day at a wine festival.
Okay, now we get to the interesting details. Yeah. Okay.
And then he asked me, "Hey, David, do you want to come back to our company?" And I was, that's actually a very good idea. I also really didn't like the job that I was doing at that moment. It was very tedious and.
May I ask you, what was it?
It was a car configurator for Porsche. I don't know.
Okay.
So it was okay. It was, but it wasn't really doing 3D art as much as testing what was already there. So I was really bored with that job, to be honest. And then I was very happy to have the opportunity to come back here. But of course, I had to do the art test and do the regular application. And but then I came back here, and then it was during the production of Anno 2205. So then, I kind of worked on Anno 1404, completely skipped Anno 2070, and then I was back to Anno 2205, and this is already 6.5 years ago, I'd say.
And then, of course, Anno 1800.
And then, of course, Anno 1800.
Would you say it is still an absolute valid tactic to meet our studio manager at a wine fest to get hired here?
I don't know, but I think a lot of interns do get hired afterwards, and it doesn't matter if you get hired immediately afterwards or if you return several years later. I think that's...
To be honest, it's a good story. We had a chat in one episode with Tommaso, our recruiter, where we talked especially about this, like starting as a junior and then getting experience in a very small industry, which always means there's a high chance that you meet people later on in your career, etc. So, but yeah, the transition, like from 1404 working in the automobile industry, and then what changed between 1404 and 1800. This is probably an interesting one because I think everyone who works in that field, any kind of art, will probably testify that yes, a lot of things changed in the last 10 or even the last 20 years or more. But the transition for you, if you think back, working on 1404, how was your daily routine as a digital artist, as a 3D artist on 1404, and what changed since like working on Anno 1800 or even like beyond? Was it maybe even the case that from the beginning of the production of Anno 1800, which was, which year again? Time flies. It's like 6 years ago?
5?
I don't know.
No,
But I don't know anymore. When was the announcement? It doesn't matter because technology changes so quickly, and I have the personal feeling that especially the last 5, 6, 7 years, it was even accelerated. So, how was it from your experience?
So a lot of things are pretty much the same as it was with the Anno 1404. So the daily routine of getting a concept art and creating a building from scratch. So all this handcrafted work and spending a lot of time on texturing and modeling. So the basic components kind of stayed the same, but technology and tools have evolved quite a lot since then. So with Anno 1404, it was modeling inside of 3D Studio Max and texture painting in Photoshop. And then with 2205, we still had kind of the same workflow, making our low polys inside of 3D Studio Max and then high polys also in Max and texturing in Photoshop. So it was the same, but the shaders had evolved. So there were more maps. With 1404, we only had like diffuse and specular, and then we had emissive, metallic, roughness. So the entire spectrum of physically based rendering maps. But with Anno 2205, we had very, all the materials were like hand painted. They were not so various and rough as an Anno 1800, which was a new challenge to get like brick walls or slate roofs. So these. So there we had to start using materials more than just ordinary texture painting. And also a lot of elements started to repeat. So we started to work with modules instead of building the entire building from scratch.
Yeah.
We start with just modular pieces and put the entire building together. So it's this is quite a game changer. And then we don't texture anymore in Photoshop, but we use the Substance toolkit, so it's Substance Designer, Substance Painter. These tools have become industry standard, and they allow for PBR rendering and PBR materials, and everything is procedural by now. So in earlier days, we had to paint all the dirt in the cavities, for example, and nowadays we have generators that can take over parts of this, but not everything. So there's still a lot we have to do by hand, or we want to do by hand. So if we can have dirt generators that apply some 3D geometry. Always has to be as dirty as possible, so only then it looks realistic and matches the time frame. Yes, of course, and especially in the for Anno 1800, like the industrial areas. So there's always smog and
a little bit grime, and worn down textures, and that is interesting. So, because I never thought about that. Of course, I mean, art direction means different things for games. We had the clean, more sci-fi, futuristic aesthetics from 2205.
Yeah.
Was like moving from that one to Anno 1800, besides a general ramp of visual fidelity, because games look better and that requires a lot of work. Do you have the feeling that, or the experience that it took way more time as a result to work on an Anno 1800 asset compared to a 2205 asset? Or is it so that also new tools made it easier to work on that?
Yeah, it's surprisingly similar. I think we can.
Okay.
I think it pretty much took the same time because we have more detail, different materials, but also different tools. So it kind of the texturing part has sped up quite a bit with the Substance toolkit. But on the other hand, our 3D models have a lot more triangles, and the texture count has grown. So these balance each out, sort of.
Okay, so interesting. So it's still like on a even scale, you would say.
Yeah, I think so.
Like with the procedure generated texture, etc. I mean, this is a big topic anyway. Not only for texture maps, etc. and substances, but also more and more we go into a future where tools can help us to even help to create a bit of variety of 3D objects in general, which then can be painted, etc. How was it for you compared to Anno 1404, so going a little bit earlier, because that I think was way more everything has done to be by hand, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So for Anno 1404, we also modeled each slate on every roof, basically, and nowadays we have materials that can take over. So a lot of quality can be achieved by materials nowadays, but there's still a lot of time that we spend on the high poly details. So we basically build every building 2 times. One, the first iteration is the low poly, and the second iteration is the high poly, where we kind of rebuild everything with just way more geometry, and then we project the geometry onto a low poly to get this final look, and also those effects like broken corners or rounded corners. So that's all parts that are still needed.
I mean, you are mainly on props. And with the Anno series, which is a strategy game, which is a subgenre in itself, so it's not, let's say, your classic set dressing buildings and moving characters. Is it so like? Is it special to work on a game like Anno in the sense that if you have new colleagues in your art team, etc., coming maybe from different kind of productions and genres, is there something where you tell them or have to tell them this is specific working on Anno assets? Because of reason X, because of the different point of view? Is it like a specific, do you need more LOD levels or something with buildings and you have to keep in mind as an artist? Because I know that for some various disciplines, etc., strategy games can be special because of the viewpoint, etc. Is that something which affects the daily work of you and the other artist in your team?
Oh yeah, definitely. The perspective is completely different. So by nature, we tend, or 3D artists tend to zoom in really close and try to get the most out of every pixel on the texture, like have high-res textures for brick walls, etc. But the Anno player doesn't zoom in that far. The game has to look perfect from a distance, actually. So there's also a lot of geometry that we can just throw away, basically. So anything that's not visible to the camera, so anything below a roof, is basically discarded right away, or at least in one of the lot levels we will discard a lot of geometry. And also our buildings need to we have 5 lot levels, and we need to remove as much geometry as possible with each stage. So because the Anno engine has to deal with thousands of assets simultaneously on the screen. So with other like ego shooters, for example, often half of the world is blocked by a building or a wall or something, and doesn't need to be rendered. But with Anno 1800, everything needs to be rendered, and you can jump to any location, so it needs to load quite fast. So that's why we spend a lot of time and effort on making highly optimized models, so they really have just one texture, basically, and as few triangles as manageable paths. So I think new 3D artists are always especially struggling with the little amount of triangles that we have at hand and the little amount of texture
Make
space.
the best out of almost no triangles. Here you have one set of triangles, enjoy.
Exactly, yeah.
Do you have the feeling that back then you had, let's say, less variety in disciplines? So as an example, you had your concept artist, 2D artist, digital artist go, and that the art team also for Anno became not only bigger but also more specialized? Is it so that you have more jack of all trades positions? Like, okay, these are the people really good at 3D art, this is 2D art, aka concept art? Or is it so that you say, yes, when you think about lighting artists, etc., that also you see that the production becomes more and more specialized in the art team?
I think the departments haven't changed all that much. We still have our concept artists and our 3D artists, and they all need to be jack of all trades, kind of. We do mostly modeling and texturing, but also rigging, animation, placing the feedback units, applying effects. So we work on an asset from the beginning all the way to the end, and everyone has to basically know about everything. But of course, we have experts on some topics. So if you find it difficult to create this particular roof, or maybe you need a scripted plugin, then we have our specialists that can deal with it. Or sometimes we have animators that are just really good at animating, and but not all the time. So.
But that also means there's a chance that it not becomes, let's say, dull because you're doing the same stuff all the time in a production loop. So there's a little bit of variety for everyone.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it never becomes dull. definitely. I think it's also nice that you don't just model your building and then someone else textures it and the next person animates it, but it's really your asset that you start and get it finished, basically. And there's a huge variety of assets. So although I've only been doing buildings, there has been everything from robot fighting arenas in Anno 2205 to heavy productions and cozy village houses. So there's a lot to experience, and every building is challenging in its own way. It's not like, okay, I know how to do this. I'll do this as I have always done it. So there's always ways to improve your skills.
Drawing a picture of the future. You see what I did there? So without thinking about, like, let's hope the Anno series will have 10 more installments, who knows? But thinking about your position, your job, your role in the future, are there some, let's say, progressions, if it is technology-wise, on the gaming market, on games in general, where we say, okay, this is something I'm looking forward to, this is interesting, or something where you would say, very open question, as you see, what you have a close eye on, like some sort of development where you're saying this is where the direction in the games industry is going when it comes to 3D art, and this is something we all should keep an eye out.
Yeah. I think in the future there are some technologies that may disrupt our workflow as we have it now. So me personally, I'm looking forward to having virtual reality applications more in a production environment. At the moment, they do exist, but they're all not where we need them yet to be. But okay, I imagine it's going to be weird sitting there with your virtual reality headset and sculpting and modeling. But I think it would be really nice to have like your 3D model in front of you on your desk, maybe with augmented reality. So that's probably going to be a thing sooner than we think.
What is missing yet for that becoming reality? Is it fidelity? Is it just you cannot be as accurate as with traditional
I would say so. Yeah, it's I think one of the main 3D programs, be it 3D Studio Max or Maya or Blender, needs to hop on and give you all the abilities that you had originally and enhance it with VR. So at the moment, there's specialized VR sculpting or modeling packages, but they're always lacking some feature that you already know and have
that one
using all the time. So for me, for example, like scripting in 3D Studio Max, it's super easy to customize everything, and with Gravity Sketch or Adobe Medium or Adobe 3D Modeler, what's it gonna be called soon? You don't have that ability yet.
So you mean what we need is one of the big players like Adobe to join the VR club and bringing their big tool suite into VR.
Yeah, Adobe. I think Blender has become a very popular software, and they are also implementing some stuff in that direction. But it's also not yet that far. So you can have the viewport, but you can't really do anything in it. So it's more like you can view what you're doing in 3D, but you would still have to use your mouse and keyboard. Let's see. That's
something, which gets you excited, like a project you would love to work for. If it is for here at Ubisoft Mainz or in private, does not matter what kind of like game. But is there something like a game or a specific setting thing you would love to work for in future? Like, I would love to work for, you said sci-fi, maybe more to work on characters or weapons or whatever, or a specific kind of genre or game you say, I would love to work for on this kind of thing?
I'm actually quite happy with what I'm doing. So, like making an indie VR title, perhaps, or a VR city building game that would be kind of cool. And other than that, just continue modeling and texturing.
Look, I have an idea. I have the feeling I pitched that before. But if you want to join my venture, I have the idea. Imagine, you know from back in the day, Populous?
Yeah.
Imagine Populous in VR. You have a globe, right? And in VR, you can rotate the globe and build and do city building stuff, etc., and do your wonders and be a god, etc. But just in VR.
Yeah, I would love it.
Yeah, and then like in Civilization, you have your council, etc., helping you with different aspects. They just pop up around you, around the globe, look and watch with you with a globe and give you advice and stuff.
Yeah.
So you're doing you're doing the important part, creating assets, etc. So we have someone for 3D. We have Jack for UI. I do the marketing and the important part. And let's do it. Let's kickstart something.
Yeah.
We should make sure that we don't tell too many people. But I think we're onto something here.
Oh, awesome.
Populous in 3D. I mean, we don't need to. Maybe is the IT up for grabs for Populous? I don't think so. That was Peter Molyneux, right? Is it Populous Peter Molyneux or is it Sid Meier? I think it's Peter Molyneux. People might get very angry with me in the comments. Okay, David, thank you. There is a lot to talk about. Like I noticed that back when I had the episode with Bartek for graphics programming, that as soon as you dive into any sort of like graphics topic, there's so much to unfold. And it was very, very interesting. Maybe we do a second episode with you in the future, or live stream if you're up for that, because I thought about getting a bunch of people in a live stream together doing different art things on projects and then just share their thoughts and point of view. That was very interesting. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching. And as always, if you want to see any specific discipline, topic, etc. covered in the future, as well as want to share any feedback, do so in the comments on our social media channels, etc. And until next time, to Mainzframe.